Next up, Kate Moody is back for tonight's business report. Hello there again.
Hi,
trade, a top focus for the Trump administration. We've been seeing these ongoing trade war between China and the U.S., but it's not just about imposing tariffs, also new deals.
Absolutely. Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, is in Ottawa to put the finishing touches on the new version of NAFTA, which has the slightly less catchy name of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Well, the trade deal was signed late last year, but it has yet to be ratified by any of the three members. Trade ties among the neighbors were strained by American tariffs on steel and aluminum exports, which Washington lifted only earlier this month. $1 trillion worth of trade is at stake, and Pence and Justin Trudeau sounded optimistic about their progress.
We're very much looking forward to working together to make sure that the benefits of this agreement, which we took a fair bit of time and energy to get right.
We believed it could be a win-win-win agreement, and we think the USMCA, which will be the largest trade deal in the history of the United States, will create jobs and opportunities in our country. It'll support growth in Canada and Mexico and all across North America.
Well, further complicating that relationship is China. A senior executive of Huawei was arrested last year in Vancouver and is facing possible extradition to the U.S. Beijing has retaliated by arresting 2 Canadian men. Both Trudeau and Pence urged their release. Well, meanwhile, a report by Bloomberg suggests that China has stopped purchasing U.S. soybeans. If confirmed, it would represent a tough move from Beijing in its ongoing trade war with the United States, a move that would impact America's biggest agricultural export. This week, Chinese state media has also suggested it could restrict American companies' access to rare earths. That's a crucial component of electronics. And state TV broadcast the rather cryptic message, "Don't say we didn't warn you." Donald Trump, for his part, has said China would love to make a deal, and he said the tariffs were proving effective. Well, Huawei is pressing ahead with its legal case against Washington's efforts to ban it. The Chinese tech giant has rejected allegations that its links to the government pose a security risk. And this week, it invited journalists, including France 24's Charles Pellegrin, to tour company headquarters in Shenzhen. Here's his report.
It takes 12 hours, start to finish, to make this model of Huawei smartphone. This finely tuned process churns out one device every 28.5 seconds. A process that will be heavily disrupted by the U.S. sanctions against the company. By one estimate, deliveries will drop by 25% if Huawei can no longer fully use Google's Android operating system. This without counting in the cost of finding alternatives to American chip suppliers. But Huawei says it has stockpiled components in anticipation. It is also working on developing its own chip-producing ability and own operating system.
We have a 90-day window in which we're going to continue to look at what we need to do. But like I say, the plans that we have are well advanced, and we can cope with this. Will it be a comfortable migration? Probably not. But do we have the resources, the assets, the people, and the will to work through this? Of course we do.
Huawei is also counting on the U.S. court system to overturn these sanctions. This lawyer believes the Chinese group has a strong case, especially when it comes to the accusation of intellectual property theft.
I think it's a hard case, even for the side of the U.S. government. They have to bear a high burden of proof. They have to prove every element is met. So I think there would be a lot of room for the Huawei side to argue.
In the meantime, Huawei will have the task of convincing European customers to stay on in spite of uncertainty over key Google apps like Gmail or YouTube. The Chinese tech giant represents 25% of the European smartphone market. And judging by the look of their Dongguan campus, which includes replicas of Paris, Grenada, and Freiburg, the old continent is a crucial battleground for Huawei's global ambitions and the US-led campaign against it.
Charles Pellegrin reporting there. Well, let's take a look at the day's trading action. The major European indices closed mostly higher, shrugging off those ongoing trade tensions. We saw gains of about 0.5 percentage point in London, Paris and Frankfurt. Milan down about 0.25% on ongoing concerns about a possible clash over Rome's spending plans. Wall Street is trying for gains after sharp drops earlier this week. The U.S. Treasury bond yield was up slightly, having hit its lowest level since 2017 on Wednesday. Just under an hour's trade to go until we find out whether markets are able to finish in the green for the first time this week. Moving on to some of the day's other business headlines now. Brazil's economy contracted 0.2% in the first 3 months of the year. The decline, while expected, raises more concerns about the prospect of another recession. The far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has largely failed to implement the economic reforms he promised, including his signature pension overhaul. In the UK, production of cars plunged by 45% in April, according to new data. Many manufacturers had closed or temporarily slowed the pace at their factories in preparation for the planned exit from the EU on March 28th. The auto industry expects production to remain slow until a Brexit deal is reached. And Mark Zuckerberg is facing an effective vote of no confidence at Facebook's annual shareholder meeting. A string of data privacy scandals has led to growing calls for the founder, chairman, and CEO to relinquish some of his control over the social media empire. He is unlikely to lose that vote, though, as he holds 60% of the voting power. Disney and Netflix have threatened to stop filming in the U.S. state of Georgia if it pushes ahead with a new restrictive law on abortion. Georgia is a popular location for movie and TV projects because it offers a lucrative 30% tax break for studios. Ellen Gainsford reports.
This blockbuster hit was shot in Pinewood Atlanta Studios in Georgia. The state is known as the Hollywood of the South for its $9.5 billion media production industry. In 2018, 455 TV and film projects were completed there. But Disney's CEO has said he may be forced to cancel future projects in the region due to its new restrictive law on abortion.
If it becomes law, it'll be very difficult to produce, or I rather doubt we will. Many people who work for us will not want to work there, and we'll have to heed their wishes in that regard.
On May the 7th, Georgia's Republican governor signed a law banning abortion after a doctor can detect a fetal heartbeat. This is normally about 6 weeks into a pregnancy, often before a woman realizes that she's pregnant. If the legislation survives court challenges, it's set to take effect in January. Netflix was the first studio to speak out against the ban. The chief content officer for the streaming platform and studio said, "Should it ever come into effect, we'd rethink our entire investment in Georgia." There are 92,000 jobs in the film and television industry in Georgia, which total $4.6 billion in wages. It's not the first time the state has faced such a backlash. In 2016, Hollywood rallied against a religious freedoms bill that critics said discriminated against LGBTQ people, leading the governor to veto it.
So will the lobby of Hollywood be powerful enough to overturn that law? Remains to be seen.
We've seen it work before. Money talks. Thanks so much, Kate.